Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Weekend Waypoints for D1 Baseball and SEC Extra. Here to get you ready for Friday's action around the SEC. We're going to look back on some news of the week. We're going to recap Thursday's games, a couple of wild ones in different ways on Thursday in the SEC, and then of course we will get you ready for Friday's action. We'll talk about the series of the weekend. We'll talk about the pitching matchup of Friday, and then we'll give you a heads up on what to look for as the weekend goes along. So let's jump right into it. As always, I'll start with some of the news of the week, just kind of rounding up things from the midweek or injury updates, all that kind of stuff. Again, I just kind of compile these as they go, and surely there's something, through the cracks here, but got as much as I can wrapped up here. First off, on the rotations, no surprise, no Nate Dome for Mississippi State, no AJ Russell for Tennessee. No final word on those guys. I know Tennessee said they're going to take their time with AJ Russell, but certainly a guy who's been up and then down and then up and then down. You don't feel great about that. Dome's in the same situation, got through 12 pitches last weekend. Certainly not a great sign that that's the way that played out. In post-game, I saw that last weekend, I saw Chris Lemonis kind of downplay it. And maybe that's fair, but it does give you a little bit of pause. The fact that you held this guy out for as long as you did, and then you bring him back and he lasts 12 pitches. That's not what you're looking for there. So other Tennessee things, Tony Vitello said, and this is his quote, would like to think that Billy Amick will be available this weekend. Billy Amick's been out with had his appendix removed a couple weeks ago, so they've just kind of been, obviously that ends up being a surgery, so you need some time to recover from that. But also they're going to also be cautious with Billy Amick, and frankly, with the way they've been swinging the bat, they don't have a lot of need to rush him back. I mean, they want him back, obviously, but it's not like the offense has been struggling without him. So if you're Tennessee, you really do have the luxury of taking your time with it, and really making sure he's back to 100% before you push him out there. So, but they're hopeful he's available this weekend. Speaking of teams taking their time with things, Arkansas, and that was Dave Van Horn's direct quote, taking their time with Dylan Carter, who came back quickly from a Tommy John, pitched a little bit, but now they're backing off a little bit. So that's obviously a concern there. And then Hunter Dietz, who debuted for the season, the LSU weekend while I was there, he has not pitched since. So he left, he pitched on Tuesday, but he left mid at bat Tuesday with the trainer. So those are a couple of guys to kind of watch out for. I know I saw some reporting after the midweek games, plural, for Arkansas, that they're going to, try to aggressively get something definitive on these guys so that they know what they have as the season moves forward. In actual game action, Florida State run-ruled Florida. And look, man, like Florida, the midweek thing is just a thing with Florida. And sure, Florida State's good, but that's three of them. But we obviously know they've struggled elsewhere in midweeks, and it just kind of seems like it's going to be a thing. It already has been, right? That's tripping up Florida, and now they're coming off of a sweep against Mizzou, which really does kind of put some pressure on their series this weekend against South Carolina. Now that's at home, and South Carolina is going through its own stuff right now. But man, that series suddenly seems really important for Florida just to feel good about where they're at. And they're going to have a fascinating postseason case when it's all said and done, because up until last weekend against Mizzou, they'd been taking care of business on the weekends. There's a reason we still had them ranked really high. But those midweek losses, some of them will age okay. I assume the Florida State losses will still be, they won't be bad losses, but there are some that could be by the time it's all said and done. So we'll have to see, but so it's just going to be a fascinating case. They're going to have even if they climb back into a hosting top 8 discussion, whatever it is, they're going to have a lot of losses relative to teams that are in that range. So we'll see. Some rotation stuff and various other things. Mason Nichols is going to make a second straight start for Ole Miss. Started last weekend. Obviously, Ole Miss is really searching for answers in that regard. So Nichols, they're hoping, can be one. Big series this weekend against Mississippi State. Ole Miss has not won a series against Mississippi State since 2015. That is a long time, especially when you consider that most of those years, Ole Miss has been good. And the years they've been bad, like State has also, like last year, State has also been bad relative, to the expectation. So kind of a surprise it's been that long. But anyway, Mason Nichols starting this weekend for Ole Miss. South Carolina is inserting Ty Good into the rotation, a successful starter at College of Charleston. So this is not a new thing for him, but it is new for him at South Carolina. He'd been pitching out of the bullpen, and man, he's been really good, no pun intended. ERA under 1 in SEC games. Not electric stuff from a traditional standpoint, like his fastball's not up there at 97, but super high spin breaking ball, competes his butt off. Looking forward to seeing how he does. Other South Carolina news: Cole Messina has been in concussion protocol. Mark Kingston said in the midweek and media availability that he is hopeful that Cole Messina will be back this weekend. So we'll just kind of have to see. A couple of Vanderbilt things: Devin Futrell questionable this weekend. He was a guy coming off that South Carolina start where, regardless of an injury, they were going to have to start asking questions about his viability. We'll see, especially since Grayson Carter has shown signs of doing some nice things in the rotation. What do we ultimately see Futrell's future being? Also, J.D. Thompson, who's pitched mostly in midweek games. This doesn't have as much weekend impact, but worth noting from a Vanderbilt perspective, that J.D. Thompson was back last Tuesday. Given that they're going to be cautious bringing him back in, doubt we see him this weekend against Texas A&M, but it is a notable thing for Vanderbilt's pitching depth. They could theoretically get him back. Let's get through some comments here, because we have quite a few here. Jeremy Scott on Facebook with his usual Roll Tide. Big weekend for Bama baseball, and there's also A-Day. Yeah, I mean, we're at that time of year where college campuses get kind of crazy because we've got spring football, so there's going to be spring games, and some have happened already. But then you start getting into May when it's like, oh, we've got graduation and move out, and so I always look ahead if I'm traveling to a campus to see like what else is going on, like how gnarly is the traffic going to be, how bad is the parking situation going to be. So regardless, yes, big weekend for Bama. Bama's another team that kind of needs something this weekend. Going up against Arkansas, obviously that's not a great place to need some wins. Now it is at home, but it's not a great situation when you need some wins to be facing Arkansas. We'll see though. Armstrong on YouTube: Joe, it's a windy day in Knoxville. Could be the winds of change for my Tigers. Yeah, let's go keep the faith. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, look, you're going to have to fight fire with fire with Tennessee. LSU is like you're just going to have to. Because you're not going to shut down that offense completely. And hey, if the wind's blowing out, that can be an equalizer. Or if the wind is blowing balls all over the place to where maybe you get some bloopers to land, or you get some drop pops, whatever it is. I think it's good for LSU to ugly up these games because you're going to have to score runs. You're not going to shut them down. So hey, let's make it as high scoring and as ugly as we can get it, because that gives you a chance. Armstrong had another one. Oh yeah, one more, Joe. Can you explain the meaning of weekend waypoints for those of us who are slow? I'll have to admit I'm among the slow, because when the folks behind the scenes here at D1 Baseball who have done a fabulous job helping me get this off the ground came up with the name, I wasn't exactly sure what it was, but a waypoint, I guess, is on your path to somewhere. A waypoint is like a stop along the way, or a various like a place a place along the way to where you're going. So I guess that trying to play off of the highway to Hoover name, they went with weekend waypoints. I wanted to go with biscuits and baseball. That was my number one choice there. Another idea that came out of there was calling it Just Means Joe. I wasn't really comfortable with that one, even if we'd have gone that direction, because it kind of, I don't know. I'm not trying to be I know I am the only one on this show, but I'm also trying not to make it about me. But I thought it was a funny name, if nothing else. Jasper Pogue on YouTube: Nate Dome, sucks for him. Yes, agreed. State will still sweep the Revs. I mean, we'll see. State's certainly been the better team this year, but Ole Miss is going to be desperate. And I think sometimes you can't underestimate desperate teams, because desperation can be a motivating factor. Jasper also has Florida equals overrated, and so far, yeah. That is true. So far they have been, but they're very talented. So we'll have to see if they bounce back. One more for Jasper on YouTube: who is in more trouble, Auburn or LSU? I'll say Auburn. LSU is more talented. They're also one game ahead. Well, now they're 1.5 games, because Auburn lost last night to Kentucky. So they're 1.5 games better than where Auburn is. So that's an advantage. I also just like the talent at LSU more. I think they have a run in them. Auburn's not going to, I mean, famous lad's words maybe, but I don't think Auburn's going to be this bad the rest of the year. I think they have a run in them, but man, it's getting late real early for Auburn to do anything but kind of get back to the bubble conversation. So I'll go Auburn being in more trouble. They're just behind the eight ball. Billy Derrick, my buddy over at covers Vanderbilt, does a great job there on YouTube. Wish we could see Holton versus Prager tonight, but it'll be fun all weekend at Blue Bell anyway. I'm with you, Billy. That's the series of the weekend. Kendall Rogers will be there, so we'll have some coverage from that series. There were potentially some good pitching matchups, and there still will be. But yeah, Holton versus Prager would be about as dynamic a lefty on lefty as you could get in the SEC. That would have been a lot of fun. Should be a fun series. Regardless, Bryant Lane on Facebook, Bybee, referring to Ben Bybee, did reasonably well. And yeah, Ben Bybee's a guy who is going to have a role to play for Arkansas the rest of the season. Getting him back, getting him healthy, getting him going is big. Let's not forget, when he got to Arkansas, they were pretty excited about him as somebody who could be a future weekend guy. That hasn't been in the cards so far, but he's certainly going to have a role to play the rest of the season. So that is good news to go along with a couple of the pieces of not so good news for Arkansas on the mound this weekend. Anything else here? James A. Kennedy, putting it pretty simply, I guess, on Facebook, Hogs are the best. So if you want to see good baseball, then watch the Hogs. I mean, that's indisputable right now. Certainly if you like pitching, because man, they're going to pitch it. Their offense, as we discussed with Matt Jones on the Highway to Hoover podcast earlier this week, there'll be the occasional game where they get got because they just don't score enough, but more often than not, they do, because the pitching has just been excellent. So great stuff on the comments. If you're watching, keep them coming. I will try to fold them in as we go along here without totally derailing things. So, although I do appreciate a ridiculous question, as you guys know, I appreciate some of those as well. Quickly on the Thursday games, we had Kentucky 6, Auburn 5. That moves Kentucky to 12-1 in SEC play. I mean, just incredible. I'll pull up the box score from it here quickly. Yeah, so 6-5. Auburn had a chance in the bottom of the eighth. They get one on a Christian Hall pinch hit RBI single. There was also a ball. Mason Mainers was on third base later that inning. Ball comes back to the mound. Good play defensively for Kentucky to get it to home plate. They tag out Mainers trying to score. That was kind of Auburn's last best push there. Johnny Hummel, who's been so good in the bullpen this year, gets the save. Travis Smith pitched well out of the bullpen. I think the idea for Travis Smith with Kentucky is eventually to get him back to the rotation, but man, he is a weapon in the bullpen because he gives Kentucky a look they don't have a lot of in the bullpen. Kentucky has, a lot of pitchability. They've got some lefties with pretty decent stuff, but they don't have a lot of righties with like that kind of stuff. Like he'll run a fastball up into the mid 90s. He's got a real nasty slider when it's on. So he's giving you a right-handed reliever with a good fastball and a horizontal breaking ball that you don't really have. And even Johnny Hummel has good stuff, but it's a different type of repertoire than what Travis Smith is. So that's interesting to me. As long as Trey Pusser continues to, and Nyman and Mason Moore, obviously, as long as those guys continue to pitch well, I'd be tempted if I'm Nick Mingione and Dan Roselle to say, let's roll with this with Travis Smith in the bullpen. I kind of like that role for him, honestly. So we'll see what happens there, but can't say enough about Kentucky, 12-1 in the SEC. And now look ahead, do yourself a favor, look ahead at Kentucky's schedule. They do have a series against Arkansas. Oh, that one's at home in Lexington. They also have a series with Tennessee coming up, but again, that's in Lexington. The only series in front of them that I would be very surprised if they win is Arkansas. Obviously, Tennessee is going to be a tough customer, but their schedule has, I don't want to say opened up, but you look at when you see this series against Auburn before the season, you think, man, that's a tough ask. And it still is to win the next two games in Auburn, but clearly Auburn has not performed like we thought they would. So there has been some, I'll just use the phrase opening up in the schedule where you look at what Kentucky has in front of it and like, you just start to see that like there really shouldn't be any limits on what this team can do. Like top 8 seed is there for Kentucky. At this point with 12 wins, they don't have to do anything crazy to get there, right? You need like 6 wins and certainly 7 the rest of the way in the SEC to get to 18 and 19 wins. That's usually a top 8 seed in the SEC. So that'll be something to watch. Kentucky's done a lot of good work this season. I think there's ways in which they're a better baseball club than they have been in the past. The offense is more physical. It's not leading to a lot of home runs necessarily, but the offense is more physical. I do think they have some better quality depth on the mound, and especially in the bullpen than they've had. So there are reasons to think this Kentucky team can go a step further than last year's Kentucky team. We'll obviously have to see, especially with those tough series against Tennessee and Arkansas coming up, because you're going to get battered and bruised a little bit in those series. It's just a matter of how well you can kind of mitigate that. Big win last night though for the Wildcats, and again tough for Auburn, down to 2-11, really running out of time to make that run that I think we all assumed was coming at some point. The other game, Georgia 15, Mizzou 10. Really not that close. Mizzou made a late run to get it pseudo interesting late. The notable thing for Georgia, Charlie Condon, 2 more home runs. Don't look now, but if Georgia ends up either playing deep into Hoover or getting into a regional and they get to about 60 games, he's on pace for like 40 home runs. And it's been a long time since we've had someone in college baseball with 40 home runs. So that would be one heck of a milestone. Certainly that would put him in pole position for National Player of the Year honors, even if Georgia's just kind of a decent team, right? Because that season would just be so overwhelming, especially doing it in the SEC. Kind of running out of words to talk about how great Charlie Condon is, but 2 more home runs last night. Okay, series of the weekend. I talked about it a minute ago. Vanderbilt at Texas A&M. I think this is a wonderful strength-on-strength matchup of Vanderbilt's talented pitching staff with Texas A&M's physical offense. Vanderbilt with Holton and Cunningham have both been very good in conference play. Holton, a sparkling ERA and a bunch of strikeouts behind only Hagen Smith in terms of strikeouts in SEC play. Cunningham's ERA is still solid. I think it's 4.64 in conference play, but striking out a ton of guys, not really walking guys. That's been a big thing for him. And then Grayson Carter, great start against Missouri, and not so great start last weekend. We'll see which Grayson Carter we get this weekend, but certainly in terms of talent, that 1-2-3 for Vanderbilt is going to give A&M's lineup a real push. But on the other hand, A&M's lineup, we've talked a lot about Montgomery, Laviolette, Grahovac. They've got 2 Ivy League transfers in Jackson Appel from Penn, Hayden Schott from Columbia, who have really given that lineup some depth. Then you add on Ted Burton, Ali Camarillo. Lineup's just really good 1 through 9. I think I would take Tennessee's probably, but A&M's right there. Should be a fun weekend in College Station. One other thing to watch there is A&M has leaned pretty heavily on its bullpen in SEC play, and in a good way, not in a desperation way, I don't think, although their rotation has not been as solid in SEC play as they were in non-conference. Some of that makes sense, but it has been a pretty big drop-off there. But Evan Oschenbeck, again, has been just about untouchable. 2nd season in a row that's been the case. Weston Moss has stepped up in SEC play. Brad Rudis, Shane Sadeo. Like that quartet in SEC play has been really good for A&M in the bullpen. So I don't think they're going to be afraid to go to some of those guys, especially Oschenbeck, whenever they need them. So look for that. The top pitching matchup today for me is, again, not one that's like the biggest names going against each other, but it's just going to be fascinating. That's LSU's Gage Jump taking on, as it turns out, Tennessee's Chris Stamos. It was a TBA for Tennessee today in the official rotation. You have Drew Beam and then Xander Sechrist the next 2 days. By the way, spoiler alert, I think Holman and Beam is going to be the pitching matchup of the day tomorrow, but we'll get to that tomorrow. But 2 things here. One is that you just don't know what you're going to get from Chris Stamos. He's had a nice season for Tennessee. You expect this to kind of be a staff day where maybe they just want to get him through a couple. But we'll certainly see getting off to a quick start is going to be important for Tennessee. And also on the flip side for LSU, they have to see this as an opportunity of, look, with Gage Jump on the mound, we have an advantage in this game, theoretically. And then we go into tomorrow with Luke Holman on the mound, and even though he's facing Drew Beam, you look at that as a toss-up, basically. So LSU, I think, is looking at these first 2 games as, hey, like there's a path for us here to get this series win if we pitch as well as we think we can. Gage Jump is a part of that. He's been good this year, however, generally speaking. However, it hasn't gone as well in SEC play, and that's pretty standard for pitchers, so I'm not going to nitpick that too much. To me, the other concern is that he's just not getting deep into games. And early in the season, I think a lot of that was because, well, he's coming off of basically 2 years of being injured. Let's be extra careful with him, which is totally fine and understandable. But now we're getting to a point of the season where, if it's possible, you'd like to start seeing him get into the 6th inning and maybe into a 7th occasionally. Right now, he's still kind of a 4 to 5 inning guy. And with LSU's bullpen struggles, that does kind of open up the bullpen to being exposed a lot. And until they start to find better options in the bullpen or some guys step forward, whatever it is, you wonder if Gage Jump will be game to get the team deeper into games. We'll obviously have to see against the Tennessee lineup, especially in Knoxville. That's a tough ask, but something I am watching is, can Gage Jump get them a little bit deeper into games as the season goes on. Quickly, what to watch for before we wrap up here. I mentioned Kendall's going to be at Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, so look for his coverage of that series throughout the weekend. I will also be on D1 Digest duty tonight. A couple of the guys who do it more often than I do are out of pocket, so I have a home weekend this weekend, so I am going to be doing the D1 Digest that wraps up all of the coverage around the country early Saturday morning for D1 baseball. So do me a solid and read that if you want to catch up on what happened all over the country Friday night, in addition to what's happening in the SEC. All right, folks, that is going to do it for this episode of Weekend Waypoints. As I look out my window here at home in North Carolina, beautiful day outside, good temperatures, although windy, much like it is in Knoxville, Armstrong. Windy day here, but I hope the weather's nice where you are. I hope you enjoy the baseball this weekend, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow morning.